So I want to take a few minutes and talk about the paranormal pandemic that I feel is coming to our culture, because it is coming. The signs are there, and I can't tell you how many people that I know that in the past they have expressed that they don't believe in the paranormal, but yet in the past couple of months they are having paranormal encounters, and they're coming to me asking, what does this all mean? So it's kind of a testament to me that there is a powder keg that's just waiting to go off. If you look at culture today, you can see the rise of secularism, or what's really being thrown out into our faces, Satanism. And I don't say this lightly. I keep seeing it more and more, and especially in pop culture, it just keeps seeping its way into our pop culture, and they're being more bold.
Thank you to Satan for giving me inspiration.
Every month. You can see this with Lady Gaga.
Like, if you don't get this right now, I swear to Lucifer, I'm gonna.
I mean, just look at some of the faces they keep making. Very guttural, demonic type faces that I couldn't make on my best day. Like, I don't know how they pull that off. It's just, you have to be in tune with that kind of demonic vibration to even portray these kind of faces. And not only that, it seems like the veil is breaking down between realities. I mean, we're having other instances where talk show hosts, their eyes will momentarily blink as if they're reptilian or something. And I have a lot of friends, they're starting to ask these questions about pop culture. It's like, well, why is everything being twisted and distorted to be, oh, you're racist, or you're sexist if you don't want to go along with girl Ghostbusters, or the WATCHME show that pits whites versus blacks. This is why. They want this tension to build. And I've come down with 3 reasons why there's going to be a paranormal pandemic, because whatever affects us now is going to bleed over into the afterlife realm eventually, and I keep seeing it. And there's 3 reasons why, and I've come up with those reasons in this episode that we're going to explain. Now, the first one, which I covered just a little bit briefly, is the abandonment of established religions. And since Christianity, Catholicism is very big in the United States, that is the one that people are kind of flocking away from. And I will get into why in a little bit. But see, a good religion will keep you centered and balanced. It teaches you the 10 commandments of how to live on this world and how to live in the material world, because that is the natural law. You can't get away from it. You can die and you will be judged by this natural law. And when you're on this planet and you want to do your own thing, you want to live by your own rules, it's egotistical, and it starts to align yourself with very negative vibrations that leads to demonic. You don't have to worship Satan to be a Satanist. Okay, let's get this misnomer out of the way. Once you align yourself with that vibration, you start becoming twisted in your thoughts and your reality, and you start aligning yourself with the demonic vibration. And when we get into politics, I'm sorry, but if you don't believe that a lot of politicians are into Satanism, you are being very blind. I investigated a few years ago the Longwood Manor. And what's interesting is everybody in the town that he helped build, he was honored as this guy that was very prestigious. But you start pulling back the layers and you see that he was into Satanism. He was into child sacrifice. He was into all these weird and Satanist things. The stuff that was in his house was nasty. Our cameraman got pricked on the arm. Alan got sick. And then I caught this EVP in the basement of something that I have no idea what to call it or label it, except for being a gremlin-like thing in nature. Now, in Buddhism, there's this thing called the 5 poisons, and those are anger, craving, delusion, pride, and jealousy. Because once you start spiraling and inhabiting these things, it's very hard to break free from that mindset and start to travel upward into the higher vibrations that you want. There's so much footage out there on YouTube now of people just, in their own minds, they think they're doing the right thing because in their twisted and warped way, they are. It's just they're grounding themselves in these 5 poisons. They're out of touch. They don't care what you say. Even if you protest against them, they're like, let them eat cake. This is going to end very badly. And if you think things are bad now, just wait until these people start dying. What are they going to do when they see the white light and they're like, wait a minute, I didn't live a very good life. I'm not going through that white light to heaven, hell, wherever, because I didn't live justly. They're going to stay earthbound and create more misery for people on this planet and just continue to manifest into, these creatures. And I say that because a lot of these demonic forces that are on our planet now, when people say they see gray aliens and things like that, a lot of them are actually humans that have twisted themselves in the afterlife. And that is their outward appearance. They turn into these gaunt-looking gray-like figures because that is the reflection of their mind thoughts. So it gets projected outward. Saw a great episode of Ghost Adventures a few weeks ago. And in the window, you can see this gray-like figure stalking in the background. I saw this, my jaw dropped. I'm like, that is exactly what I've been talking about in my lectures for the last few years. These are the demonic type creatures that humans can turn into. Okay, so now here we have reason number 2, and that is materialism is overtaking spiritual growth. Now this is a big one I'm sure you can see everywhere, especially online. I mean, just look at Twitter. People who have the most followers are the most famous and pushing materialism in your face constantly. It's like, oh, look at my Rolls Royce, look at my bling, look at my big mansion and things like that. And people flock to it. It's scary. And this is going to lead to the downfall. Now, maybe not for the reasons you think, but see what happens is once you die, you have to leave all that stuff behind. But we're trained to be so materialistic in the society. How are you going to let go of these things? And a lot of the spirits that I talk to in the afterlife and interact with, they're here because of unfinished business, or they're clinging, or they're craving to something. That is why I call these things hungry spirits, because they can't let go. They can't move on. And if you're latching on to things like money and prized possessions and, your Rolls Royce, how are you going to move on? We have problems now in our culture where if you go to an estate sale and pick out an old piece of furniture and you're like, hey, I'm going to bring this into my house, you could be haunted over that piece of furniture. And this is stuff, 50 years ago. Fast forward to now, what's going to happen when this current generation dies off and they don't know how to let go of all the things that they're materialistically attached to? It's going to be very problematic. And of course, you start becoming what I like to call a stuck spirit. There's 2 types of stuck spirits that I've come up with psychologically. But the one I'm talking about is the spirits that feel psychologically stuck because they can't let go. They can't move on. They're in the stages of denial because they just can't let go. So they remain earthbound until they do. All right, so the very last reason that's going to lead to this paranormal pandemic is that there is a growing fear and ignorance of the afterlife. Now, this is critical because back in the old days, our ancestors knew how to deal with the spirit world. They're in tune with it. Do you know they actually had picnics at cemeteries back then? We don't do that now. We don't want anything to do with cemeteries. We find ourselves staying far away from these things. And another thing that goes along with this is once somebody dies, they usually stick around in places that they're familiar with, houses that they grew up in. And back in the old days, a lot of houses would stay in the family generation after generation after generation, and many times it was haunted. And these, our ancestors were just like, oh, that's grandma, don't worry about her. Because they knew about the spirit world and how it worked. But now we have this other problem too, where, and this comes with avoiding anything that has to deal with death. When we grow up in a house, now we sell it. We move to a different location. Or we want to escape. If somebody died there, grandma died, it's like, okay, well, let's sell off the house. And a lot of times the person who bought it will come back and be like, is this place haunted? I have weird things going on in my house. And one of the practices that's also been lost to time is cleansing a house. Now, interestingly enough, if you go back into Jewish culture, they have a lot of interesting philosophies where anything you do in an area kind of gets imprinted on the walls. And this, leads to a lot of investigators where it's common knowledge where if you start remodeling a house, things start going weird in it. And this is because all this energy has been stored up in the walls. You start tearing that stuff down, and the walls pretty much start exhaling. And all this energy starts, getting ramped up and getting back into the normal living spaces and adding to this paranormal pandemic that I'm talking about. So here again is just another thing where we're ignorant on is cleansing houses. I can't tell you how many houses that I've cleansed in the past year because people are having problems, and where it's just, the energy being exhaled or something comes through. And 9 times out of 10, when that happens, it then draws something else into the area, whether it be, maybe a past loved one or somebody that likes to feed off that type of energy, and then bam, you start having spiritual problems in the house. And that, of course, leads to the next problem of, well, once you get a spirit to come into your house, how do you deal with that? How are you going to deal with a spirit in your house? People don't know how to handle this. And that's why I say another lost art is the art of cleansing a house. Every time I move into a new house, that's the first thing I do, is clear the living space of energy, because it could be old, it could be tired, it can inhabit all kinds of emotions from the past tenant, and you could be angry and just get mad for no reason. And once you clear the air, a lot of that will go away. And that's kind of like a lost art form that people don't really connect together. And those are the 3 reasons why we are facing the paranormal pandemic that is going to be hitting our culture, if not already. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe to this channel because we're going to get into some very interesting topics in the near future. So stay tuned.